this stage. And hello, everyone. Thanks for having me here today to tell you a story of scaling threat modeling across 500 teams in ABN AMRO. And before I jump to the topic, I would like to give a short introduction about me. So, who am I? Hope you already know my name and then pronounce it correct. But my name is Abhishek Goel, and I started as a full stack web application developer back in 2010. And since beginning, I was very fascinated about application security. And in 2012, I got the opportunity to switch into application security domain. And since then, I'm working with various clients over the globe as an employee or as a consultant, and I enabled threat modeling capability for the organizations, and also conducted many threat modeling workshops for them. For last few years, I am employed in ABN AMRO as a security engineer, and here I'm responsible for enabling security in DevSecOps, and as an IT lead for threat modeling capability. So, since beginning as a professional, as a security professional, I work very closely with the developers or dev teams. And also being a developer, I experienced that switching from one mindset of a developer to another mindset of as an attacker, especially when you have to break your own application, it's not easy thing, right? But thanks the community like OWASP, where awesome people continuously, enabling security and helping people like me to grow in this area and develop this mindset, which is needed to do security in a right way. So a big thank you for the OWASP community members and the participants. And thanks for giving me this opportunity to share my story today. On that note, let's move forward. So, what is threat modeling? When I started, as I said, it was not very easy to switch from developer to security mindset. And threat modeling helped a lot. It helped me to understand how to do security, especially in web application. Please don't worry, I'm not going to take you in detail what threat modeling is and how to do it. I just want to give a high-level refresher on it. So, as we all know, that threat modeling is a systematic approach to discover security flaws and identify the security requirements proactively. It helps the teams to know what are the valuable assets they are working upon, and who is the adversary, and so for whom it is valuable for apart from the business and the clients. What are the potential weaknesses make it possible for an attacker to gain unauthorized access to the valuable assets? How to block or protect their assets from these potential security incidents, and in the end ensure that risk has been mitigated or reduced to an acceptable level. So it is not a new concept. For many decades, for last 10, 15 years, there are so many methodologies has been developed, so many papers has been published. But in last few years, the adoption of threat modeling has increased. And let's see what happened that we also started with threat modeling and what forced us to scale it up further. Okay. So back in 2019, IT transformation program was started in ABN AMRO. So teams has to adopt the DevOps culture, the DevOps way of working, and where they will get the autonomy, which not just increase the responsibility for dev and ops, but for security as well. And therefore, it became a compliance requirement for CISO to demonstrate that these DevOps teams, which are going to use public cloud, will be in control and in compliant mode, and they should be able to manage the security, not for their product, but the environment as well, because Now they have the responsibility end to end, right? So for that, we found, okay, some security capabilities has already been standardized and integrated in the pipeline, right? We have SAST and credential scanners, dependency checks for open source dependency analysis tools, and their integration with the IDE plugins. It really helps to shift security left in the DevOps lifecycle. But still, there is a scope to shift security further left in the planning or design phase to address the design challenges. Though penetration testing is there, which has a capability to identify these design flaws, depends who is doing the pen testing, what is his experience in this approach. But it occurs very late in the process, and afterwards mitigation of the identified issues is very costly, and it's not time effective as well. And because penetration testing is another problem in the DevOps lifecycle, because it's a time consuming thing, therefore to scope for each release what should be the pen tested is needed, which became another responsibility for the team. For each release, they have to create the scope of their pen testing. And apart from these automated security assessments, other security processes needs to be followed by the DevOps teams, like risk assessment, right? And these non-automated security processes create extra friction in the speed of DevOps. So it became a intrinsic need for CISO and for us as a security professional in Emerald to find out some solution or security controls to enable security culture in the team. And when we try to find out, okay, what could be the possible solution? So yeah, we landed with threat modeling, right? So we made threat modeling as a mandatory step in the DevSecOps journey of the teams. And we really wanted to nurture the security culture and enable security design thinking, along with the other automated security assessment tooling, which is already part of this CI/CD or these DevOps processes. It also helped to shift security further left in the planning phase, as we all know about it, and it enabled developers or DevOps teams to identify the potential threats, not just related to the technology, what they are using. There are plenty of tools already which can identify these weaknesses or vulnerabilities in the technology used, but the business logic or the processes they are designing to deliver the business. So they can identify these potential threats, weaknesses of their systems, and to their applications, and generate those security requirements to mitigate those threats. It also complements other security assessments in the pipeline. So especially the dynamic and pen testing. Now teams can create their scope of their pen test based on the threats they identified and the countermeasures they implemented to mitigate those threats. And in the pen test, they ask the pen tester to assure that these countermeasures are working effectively and the threat or the weaknesses has been mitigated properly. It also enables to do agile risk management. So sooner they identify the risk, better the position to manage it. It will help them to prioritize the mitigation, not from the compliance perspective, but based on the risk, right? So if they know, okay, this particular threat is more severe on my business case, then yeah, this should be my priority. I want to mitigate this, rather I focus on some other stuff, which is not that important right now. So they can pick it up in their next sprints. It also provides a way to do a continuous evaluation of this changing threat landscape, right? So in their next iteration, maybe they found new emerging threats. So for now, let's say ransomware is a new emerging threat. So in their next iteration, they can put some effort to identify if their system or application is susceptible for these new emerging threats. And ultimately, it will enable them to deliver a product which is secure by design. So how did we start? Yeah. So how did we start at ABN AMRO? So first of all, we established a CISO capability, which is a small group of people which knows about threat modeling, how to do it, and what is the best way to do it. And we established this threat modeling capability to enable threat modeling in the organization. We developed training materials and started spreading awareness about the threat modeling and started teaching to the teams how to do it and what is the easiest way to do this threat model. And for that, we chose a stride methodology with whiteboarding approach. So we didn't start with some, very complex methodology, but we just chose a stride and chose whiteboard approach. And to maintain the threat model in the digital way, we chose our existing tool sets available in the bank, Draw.io for DFDs and Confluence for managing the threat models. Also, we not just invested in the teaching, we also invested heavily in the workshop. So first we teach them, okay, what is it, how to do it, but we also help them to transfer this learning in the practical. And we spend almost 6 to 8 hours per team just to make them or as a hands-on workshop. And in that workshop, we pick one of their use case, what they are building or working upon, and just do a threat model on that. And as a result, DevOps teams welcomed this initiative. They recognized the added value. They appreciate it a lot. And then it triggered for us like, okay, if we can succeed for these 50 or 60 teams or 40, 50 teams, then let's go for a next level. And then it became a question for us, like when we have already done it for 40 to 50 teams, and next we need to require to do it for 500 teams, then what could be the challenges? And this is my question to you, to the audience. You can just log into Menti. You can scan this QR code and share your ideas, like or what do you think could be a challenge for us to scale it up? I hope you guys can log in the. I can only see one person is there, and I hope that is only me. Irfan, can you check if you are able to join this
One small notification. The stream is about a minute behind on your speech for buffering reasons, so users might take a while to log in.
Okay.
I was able to submit, Abhishek.
Okay. So, yeah. Okay, I can see few responses so far. How many people we have in as an audience today? Do we have any number?
About 40 at the moment.
Okay. Okay, 4 people. lack of consistent language, monitoring of progress, adoption. The people are increasing, so let's give a few more minutes. Punishment. Candy. Wow. Amount of trainers. Nice. Okay. Management. Commitment. Great. Yeah, I think we are almost matching the find 500 teams. Yeah, I mean, without having that number, it will be very difficult in a big organization. How many teams are there? But yeah, that's a good one. Time to do models. Mm-hmm. Great. So I think we have responses from 15 people. I think we can move further. Great. You can add on, but I think it's time to move on. So let's see what challenges we have. So to having this goal in mind, we started gathering the feedback from the teams, because it is a very crucial thing in DevOps. Without having proper feedback, and if you can't acknowledge it, you cannot sell your product in the market. So what they said, they appreciated the initiative, but time consuming. It's 6 to 8 hour long for a DevOps team. It's not easy for them to take out that time from their sprints. They have to deliver value to the business. Also, new team members are joining, so whose responsibility it is to train them. So as per the program, yeah, we chose the team. Okay, these teams are there for to start as a DevOps. So let's train them as a team. But later on, if some rotation is happening and new team members are joining in, so who will train those teams? Not looking at the threat model, so it's not sustainable. Teams are not updating their threat models after they completing their workshops and trainings. The components are outside of the team's scope. So a team is consuming a component from another team, and they don't know when that team is going to do a threat model on their component, and they are not responsible for this component. How to consume threat model in other security processes? Okay, we created a threat model. We identified certain threats. So how to prioritize the risk? How to create a scope out of it for my threat, for my pen testing. Same component, different risk assess. So the consistency was not there, right? Teams are using same components, same type of components, and according to their understanding or their knowledge gain in the concept, there is a difference in the assessment. And how to automate backlog management. So without automation in DevOps, I think nothing is possible. So yes, we also get these feedbacks, like how can we automate to manage these countermeasures as a backlog so that we can plan them in our sprints. So having these feedbacks from the teams, we also did some brainstorm as a capability owners, and we also found our own challenges. Resource management. So trainers, finding a good trainer is not an easy job, right? And our approach was very resource intensive. So finding and maintaining these resources, it was quite impossible. Training quality, because the training was provided by the human being, and different people has different style to deliver the training, though we are sharing the same training material across the team trainers, but the quality, yeah, it was a challenge. Then follow up with non-performing teams. So right now, for example, we did it for 50, 60 teams. And because of this feedback process, we identified plenty of teams are not doing threat modeling afterwards. So if we go beyond that with the same approach, how is going to be sustained? How we are going to identify and help those teams which are not performing afterwards? Integration and automation. How can we enable, or how can we enable our approach to integrate with other processes and DevOps tooling? So it became a challenge to make this capability sustainable and scalable with the current approach. So what we did, we revamped our approach and we came up with this threat modeling as a service concept. We balanced people, processes, and tooling in this new approach, right? So what we did for people. So as I said, that our previous approach was quietly dependent on the people, on the trainers. So to increase our workforce, we started train the trainers program within the organization. So within CISO, we have plenty of other security professionals. They are very good in security, but yeah, training is not always everyone's cup of tea. So we started training them so that we can get their help as and when needed. Also to do this threat modeling activity afterwards, after the training and workshop in the teams, we use security champions. So in ABN AMRO, we are already running this security champion program where we are picking up, or we are asking the teams to volunteer 1 or 2 people per team for security as a security champion who can drive the security agenda or security topics within their team. So we also training them. We are also training them to moderate these security or these threat modeling sessions within the team. So next topic was the process. How can we develop a nice process so that it is easy to consume? And with the help of our developers, with the trainers, we created a self-service e-learning training program. So our talented trainers, they created a bunch of videos, small short videos, and using this self-service platform in the bank, teams can enroll themselves for this training, and they can do this training as per their convenience and the flexibility, right? But we not just leaving the teams on this digital knowledge. Afterwards we always conduct a small session with them, a small interactive session with them to understand what is their gain in the training, what they understood. Do they have any questions or concerns? Also, we also gather their feedback on the training material. How was the content? And based on that, we improvise it for further. But we didn't leave our workshop part. So we still do the workshop, but yes, it is less intensive now. The overall timeline, which was earlier 6 to 8 hours, now it has been reduced to 2 hours in total, including that small interactive session or feedback session and plus the workshop. And in the workshop, then, we are helping the teams to implementing that knowledge in practical. And this time we chose a commercial tool for doing the threat modeling, right? And there are so many tools available in the market, open source as well as commercial. So we evaluated a bunch of them, and as I said, like without having a proper integration and automation with in DevOps area, it is very hard, to sell your services to them. So after our evaluation, we chose Edius Risk, and this tool was easy to implement in ABN AMRO environment and was compatible with the tooling which we were already using in our previous approach. And what did it bring to us? So what was the added value and what magic it created basically? So the core quality of the tool is their threat model, threat library, their rule engine, and the questionnaire. So threat library is a you can consider it as a register or of common threats and their standard mitigation measures. So if a team is developing their threat model on this tool, they can pick up one component in their DFT, and based on that component and linked threat library, some threats and their associated countermeasures added in the threat model itself. So they don't need to reinvent the threats which is already known and the underlying weaknesses and their countermeasures. And rule engine of the tool, it make it easy to automate, right? It automates how to identify, what to identify, and how to apply these common risk patterns and generate the security requirements, which is based on either a questionnaire. So we can produce a questionnaire either at a product level or a particular component level, where a team can answer those questions, and based on the answer, a rule will run in the background and a action will be performed. And that action could be adding new threats or risk pattern to the threat model, or changing the state of a countermeasure, right? So based on these questionnaires, we can fine tune the threat model itself and identify some tangible security requirements for the team. It also mapped with the industry standards, right? So after the analysis of identified threats and the countermeasures, they can apply these standards on those countermeasures, which can help them to prioritize the countermeasures which they should apply or implement first. If they are developing a system where they are dealing with the credit card data or payment like stuff, then PCI DSS is the framework which they would like to comply with. And based on their threat model in the tool, they can identify, okay, these are the countermeasures which I have to implement to comply with this this particular standard. Integration with ALM tools, right? So application lifecycle management tools, for example, Jira or Azure DevOps. So this tool is very well integrated with these ALM tooling. And now team need to put their effort to identify new threats to their process or the business logic they are developing, and analyze the identified threats based on the technology or the component of the technology they are using in their product. And once they are done, they can create these countermeasures as a user story or task based on the configuration in the system on their corresponding backlog management tool. And from there, they can plan it based on either risk or based on their standard or compliance framework. They can plan it in their sprints. It also integrates with the leading security tooling. So, for example, Fortify is a leader in the market for SAST or apps. There are other bunch of DAS tooling. For example, OWASP ZAP. So it also integrates with these tooling, and what it does basically, it collects this the information identified by these tooling, the vulnerability, and process it and map it back to the existing threats. And if it recognizes that some threat is not listed in the threat model, so it also add those new threats and associated weaknesses in countermeasure. So it really helps the team to fix these issues by design in the architecture of the product, not just applying a patch to mitigate a instance of that particular issue, which they can also test. So it also well integrate with other with various testing frameworks, so that teams can rely on their unit testing rather they wait for a pen test to go further. And it also provide the REST API to access the core components, and we can also create our custom dashboard using this API. We can identify how many threat models there are, how many associated threats and countermeasures identified, and where they are. So we can create a nice trend chart, which is a custom thing, not in the tool, but yeah, we can customize it based on using this REST APIs. But the tool itself provide you different reports format. So you can create a PDF report or CSV as per your requirement. And for us, it was the similar approach which we were teaching to the teams in our previous approach, stride and all those things. So the flow in the tool was same, what we were teaching in our training. And their interactive dashboard for threat and countermeasure projects and portfolio gives us a centralized dashboard. How many threat models are there, which teams have onboarded on threat modeling, and how they are performing, which means when they updated their threat model last. So we can identify, okay, these teams have not updated their threat model in last, for example, 3 months. So we start reaching out to those teams, and our trainers or enablers, basically, they help the team to fix their challenges if they have any, right? Customization. So you can customize the threat libraries. You can add your own threats or threat libraries based on your organization threat landscape. You can create your own rules. You can tweak the existing rule as well as you can create your own rules. You can add your own standard. So yeah, ABN AMRO bank is compliance driven. So yeah, you can convert your compliances into a standard in the tool. You can also create your own questionnaire to assess a certain scenario associated with certain products, type of products or technology. So customization is really helps you to fine tune the tool according to your organization, right? And yeah, it was easy to deploy, maintain, and access. So it is well integrated with single sign-on, and they have different deployment strategies, SaaS, and they have containers as well, and they have full-fledged installation of the tool, and it's easy to maintain. So if you are just using SaaS, then yeah, you are not responsible. It will be upgraded and maintained by the vendor itself. So I don't know how we are doing on the time. Edwin, can you help us?
So, sorry.
Do we have some time left?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
About 12 minutes for you.
Okay, great. Then, yeah, I would like to give a very high level demo on the tool. So let me just set it up. Okay. How can I move it? Yeah, that's great. So as I said, like you can create new project in the system, right? So and you can also use API. So if you want to create a nice onboarding workflow using the existing tooling in your organization, so you can use the APIs to create new project. And if a project is already exist, for example, we can take one project. So if the project is already exist and in the next iteration you want to initiate a new version out of it, so you can also create a new version of the same project. So it always starts with the architecture by default, but you can also design your a product level questionnaire. So as soon as you create a new product in the system, that questionnaire will pop up, and based on your answer, rule engine will do its magic, and threats and countermeasures will be added at the product level. But let's go to the architecture and let's see what they have there. So they always start with the zones. So whatever architecture you are designing here, first you have to select a zone. Without having a zone, you cannot create or you cannot design a threat model. And there are plenty of trust zones they have already designed, but you can also come up with your own trust zones, and you can assign certain values to these trust zone, which will help you to identify the risk, all the components in that zone. So you can take that in your calculation, basically. Now they came up with so many default components. So it depends. If you are from the automotive industry, you can use their automotive components. But if you are just developing a web application, right? So you can choose their web application server side application or component, and you can simply drag and drop it in the architecture. And here to fine tune. So as soon as you just drag and drop this component in the architecture, it will include all the default threats associated with this component. But for each component, there is a questionnaire attached, and that questionnaire, I cannot, how can I hide this thing? Hide video. Yeah. Okay. So they can, so you can complete the questionnaire associated with the component, and this questionnaire will help you to fine tune the threats and their countermeasures associated with this component. So you can choose what type of assets it is processing. So for example, if I select, it is processing credit card details. So it will add more questions based on the answer you select. So yeah, there are different types of rules you can design. Either you can add more questions by answering a question, or you can tweak with the threats and the countermeasures in the system. So based on your architecture, you just update the model, and this functionality will fetch out all the threats and countermeasures and put it in the threat and countermeasure part. So here teams can analyze the identified threats, and for each threat, it tells about you, okay, what is the impact on the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. This is the default settings. So you can also tweak based on your analysis. So yeah, if the application is internal, or what factors you are taking in consideration to identify the impact. So based on that, you can tweak the CIE rating, and how easy it would be for an attacker to exploit this particular threat, right? By exploiting these associated vulnerabilities. So if you see, yeah, this threat makes sense for this component and it is applicable, then you can see what weaknesses it poses to your application, and you can based on that, you can create a new issue in your backlog management tool, which you can plan in the sprint. So this is the one way to do that. And next is the countermeasure tab, where you can just see the countermeasures you have to implement to make this particular component secure, right? So these are the default threats and countermeasures. What about the threats associated, the business logic or the process you are automating in this component or in this web application? So you can also add your own use cases. So if I add a custom use case here, and yeah, and I can add identified or new threats, which I think, right, it's a new threat to my process. But if there are some threats which are coming from other components or from other threat libraries, so I can also add the threats from other threat libraries in the system. And what are those other threat libraries? So let's look into the threat libraries. So it comes with the with very huge threat libraries, and the most important one, their CAPAC threat library, and they are OWASP MASVS threat library, and their CS default threat library, which are nothing but the policies, security policies. So if I go to this particular threat library, so in each threat library, they have risk patterns, and these risk patterns have use cases underneath, and those use cases have threats and weaknesses, and for each weakness they can design a countermeasure how to mitigate that particular weakness for that threat. So that's how they consist of different threat libraries. And yeah, the rules. So this is the backbone of this tool: threat libraries, rules, and components. And here you can design rule either on a component level, so that rule will run on a component based on the condition, and component means on any component. You can design a rule on a questionnaire. A main questionnaire means a questionnaire which is associated at the product level, not at the component level. Also the data flow. So as soon as you join those two components and you create a data flow from one component to another component, based on that as well, you can design your own rules. So yeah, you define a certain condition, or if there is no condition, that action will be performed every time based on the module you select. But if you select a particular condition, then that action will be taken, executed by this rule engine. Yeah, so that's a very high level, I would say, a summary of or the overview of the tool. And in the end, you can export the the reports in different formats. Yep. So that's all for my side. And I hope you enjoyed this story of the scalability of threat modeling in ABN AMRO. Any questions?
Okay, it seems like it's time for us to take a look at the YouTube comments. There, of course, the stream is a bit of a delay, so please stand by while we're trying to.
Sure, no problem.
Read the comments. Okay, I see there were a couple of questions. Training just to be able to use. Lego UCS states, does look like you need another training just to be able to use the tool. And Peter Rekers asks, how do you enforce countermeasures actually being applied?
Yeah, so definitely another training, how to use the tool. So as I said, we changed our approach to train the teams, where we created two parts of that teaching. One is based on the pure concept of threat modeling, what is the value add and why we should do it and how we should do it. And second is very specific to the tooling. And in the tooling itself, for the teams, it is just about, how to draw their architecture on the tool, because rest of the thing is taken care by the development or our core capability team. They help or they onboard the team or their product in the tool centrally, and teams are enabled to create this architecture. Though in the previous approach as well, they were using Draw.io, so they are very much familiar with the tool, because Edius Risk in the background, it also uses Draw.io. And if they have already done their threat model in the Confluence, then we can simply import that diagram here, and we map those components to the Edius Risk components, and it will generate the threats and the countermeasures based on that. So definitely the training is needed, but it is not that intensive, which can create another problem for the DevOps teams from learning perspective. And what was the next question?
The next question was from Martin Pearson. Do you have any views of the risk of putting this kind of information in the cloud? It looks like a SaaS application.
Yeah. So definitely for each SaaS application, there is a risk associated. And in the bank, we have a vendor security management capability, which assess the vendor and the solution they are provided in as a SaaS and how secure it is. So yeah, it is not like that we found this tool and we just pay the money and then using a subscription. It doesn't happen like that. So it went through a process, and it is already been informed to compliance and other parties who is involved to have this SaaS solution in the bank.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for this information.